Recording in progress.
The concept of how there could be, in some places, it seems to say that there is an avoida, matters to Hashem, what we do, what our mitzvahs do, can both in the positive way and chas v'shalom in a negative way impact the Eibishter. And then on the other hand, we sometimes find different psukim and different mamor chazal that seem to indicate that our avoida does not impact Hashem. And this is what we're going to continue now to answer. The bottom of the second page of the Maimer, the paragraph on the bottom of the page, 5 lines from the bottom. V'hinei, mevor al zeh b'chassidus, is explained concerning this in Chassidus. She said, totally be'ezem madregah shemedabrim, it depends which level we are referring to. In the level where he's the singular master, the root of all roots. I'm soon going to make a specific distinction of a root of the roots. That's beyond Seder Ishtalshalos, beyond the chain order of descent. In the Sham ein negei havoida shalamat over there, the avoida down here below doesn't matter. But on the level that we need to join the head and the end of that level, over there it matters the idea of avoida, because through our avoida we make that unity of the head of the beginning of the level with the lower level. Like in the Sefer Avodah HaKodesh, it's explained, the Kabbalah Sefer. To say that we're dealing with the chain order descent. Over there, our avoida matters and touches and influences. The beginning of Seder Ishtalshalos is from Sfiras HaChachma. The Chachma here, Reish, is top of page 166. Like it says, Reish is Chachma. So the level of Chachma, that's the Reish, that's considered the beginning. That's the Roish to the Soif that's being connected through our Avoida. Over there, Avoida matters. And the Rebbe goes on higher, not just the level of Chachma, Ukmaikin Bekeser, in a similar vein in Keser, Bebchinas Arich Sheba, when we're dealing with Arich, the lower level of Keser, Arich Ampin, which is called Shoydesh Hanetzolim, the root of the emanated beings, the root of Atzilus, that's still connected to Atzilus, even though it's higher than Atzilus, even though it's part of Keser. Over there, Avoida does have an effect. In Keser, there's two levels, Bechinas Atik and Bechinas Arich. There's Atik Yoimin, the higher level of Keser, the inner level of Keser, and the level of Arich Ampin. Bechinas Arich Shu Shoydesh Hanetzolim, the level of Arich Ampin, that's the root of all the emanated beings. In Isham Negeya Inyan HaAvoida. Over there, Avoida matters. So the Rebbe is going to explain why that reaches all the way to the level of Arich by starting from a lower level, and the reason why in the lower levels the avoida matters, and then working his way up and further. So he starts first with Kalim in general. The third line from the top, Kalim Sham Negeya Inyan Avodas HaNivroim. But we're dealing with the Kalim, with the vessels, that which houses and limits the spheres and houses the oil. Over there, the avoida of the creations plays a role, matters. The inyan ha-kelim hu inyan mitzias de zulas. The idea of kelim is an entity that has to do with an other. How come? What is kelim specific thing that has to do with an other? The kelim heim helam ha'or. Kelim is the concealment of the light. So that means there is something almost like other than the light, other than Hashem, that is concealing and covering over the light. Hainu shu metzias azulas, it's a metzias of something that's other than Hashem himself. The kasher meira oir, when the light shines without any kelim to impede it and conceal it, oz yeshnei rak la'makir, all we see, all we're aware is the source. It's like looking at sunlight. You don't look at anything else. You're saying sunlight, that's showing on the sun. That's all that you're interested in. There's no existence of another. But kelim, which are the concealment of the light, they are an existence of another. And once you have kalim, so then by many levels of development of chain descent, nisavim and b'chinas nevroim came about from them the level of the created beings. So since the vessels are an idea of something that is other, so therefore through multiple chain descent becomes the level of created beings. Therefore, since they are the source for the created beings, therefore, on the level of the vessels over there, it matters the service of the created beings, which is the source of the created beings, is the kalim. Through lack of avoida, there becomes a blemish, a defect in the vessels. So now the Rebbe works his way further up, not just the kalim, but also the oir. The avoida matters. Through lack of avoida, through not doing avoida, so then the light that should have been coming down and clothed in the vessels leaves the vessels. Though we cannot say that in the light there could be a blemish, because the blemish is only possible in the kalim that has to do with being an other, and it has to do with the root of nevroim. But still in all, when the vessels are damaged, get a defect, so then the vessel cannot function to anchor the oir. So then the light leaves the vessel, and then there is the level that the light departs from the vessel. For example, fire, for it to be able to hold on to a candle and a wick, etc., you need to have a container for the oil, you need to have the oil, you need to have the wick. And if one of those are defective, the wick is not a good wick, the oil is impure, whatever it is, so then you're going the fire that was previously lit on this wick will leave. So even though what's defective, you're not going to say the fire is defective. There was no blemish in the fire. It's the candle that's defective. Yet the defect of the candle caused that the light should leave. So therefore, this means that when through the lack of avoida, the kalim become defective, it also influences the oir. So let's say further, the af. Though, like we said before, that in the light there is no blemish, through the defect and damage to the vessels, so the light leaves the vessels. There is the idea of its departure. The fact that the light leaves the vessel, that matters to the light. In other words, the light has a mission and a purpose that it's unable to fulfill because of the damage to the vessels. The kavanas are the intention and the purpose of the light is it should be in the vessels and should shine in them. When it leaves the vessels, then the light does not fulfill its purpose and its job and its mission. That's that the idea of avoida matters also to the light. Through a lack of avoida becomes the leaving of the light, that it leaves the vessel. Therefore, its purpose, the purpose of the light, which is to illuminate the vessel, is affected by it. So therefore, we see that not just the avoida influences and affects the kalim, but also the avoida influences the oir. Now the Rebbe is going to take it a step further. What about the light that is not enclosed in the vessels, beyond the level of the vessels? Also in the light that is beyond becoming enclosed in the vessels, also over there the idea of avoida matters, because the light even before it becomes enclosed in the vessels, It's at least a root for the light that becomes enclosed. It's a source for it. It's connected with it. Therefore, also in the light, it matters the avoida, because the light that's higher than becoming enclosed in the vessels, it has a connection with the light that's enclosed in the vessels. So since the light that's enclosed in the vessels is lacking something because it left the vessel, so therefore it also impacts the light that's the source of the light that's in the vessels. What is that? That is the level of arich. So that's what he's going to say right now. That's also the reason why in the level of keser, the lower level of keser, arich ampin nageh sham inyan havoida. The avoida matters over there and affects over there. Since arich ampin is the root for all the emanated beings. Since he is a root for the emanated beings, that in them, in those emanated beings, the idea of avoida matters, because it matters in the kalim, which are emanated in Atzilus, and even the oidus in the kalim of the spheres of Atzilus, it's also emanated. So since in all the emanated beings the avoida matters, therefore also in it, in Arachampin, the root of the emanated beings, in Gersham Inyan Avoida, over there the Avoida matters. As opposed to the higher level of Keser, the inner level of Keser, Amnam B'chinas Atik, but the level of Atik Yomin, Shu B'chinas Odin, Yachid Sherish HaSharoshim, it is the only Odin, the root of root, the only master, Shulamaylam Yes Sherish Netzalim, that is higher than being a root for the emanated beings. And here's what I mentioned before. The emphasis is the root of roots. He says in the brackets, the Zeu Diuk Haloshin Shoirish Hasharoshim V'loy Shoirish Hanatzolim. That's the exact language that is used over there in Kabbalah's form, that it's the root of the roots, and not the root of the Natzolim. So he's the root of Arich, which is the root of the Natzolim. So he's the root of the roots. Then the Rebbe takes it a step further. Even the term root of roots is not even an exact description over here. In truth, it's even separated from this. Atik Yomen is so removed and so separated, you cannot even call it a shoyrish to arich, which arich is the shoyrish for the olam. So therefore, since you can't say Atik is a shoyrish for arich, you can't call it shoyrish hasharoshim. And he's going to explain why. The Mashanem shoyrish hasharoshim, that what it says, shoyrish hasharoshim, in other words, when the Kabbalah's form, you refer to Atik as shoyrish hasharoshim, we just now said it's not that way. So why does it use that term? The intention is not that he's an actual root for the level of Arich. Atik Atik isn't the word that he uprooted, he moved, he changed place. That he's separated even from the level of Arich. Not just he's separated and removed. Atik Yomin is separated from Yomin Datzilus, but he's even separated from the level of Arich. So if so, why do we call it Shoyrish HaSharoshim? It's called Shoyrish HaSharoshim. That's only a borrowed term because Arich is the Shoyrish and Atik is higher than that. So we use the term, we borrow the term Shoyrish HaSharoshim, but it's not the real idea of Shoyrish HaSharoshim. So therefore, since it's even higher than being a Shoyrish for Arich, Shoyrish for the Shoyrish of Netzalim, so over there the avoida doesn't apply, and that is why we brought down the previous ois in the previous paragraph. Concerning that level, the level of Atik, we say if you sinned, what did you affect him? Many of your transgressions, what have you done to him? If you've done tzedakah, what have you given him, etc. Because we're talking about the level of Atik. So this is the first step in the answer of explaining how do we reconcile the fact that there's, in some places seems to say that it matters our avoida, in some places seems to say that our avoida doesn't matter. So the answer on this first stage is, it depends what level we're talking about. You're talking about the level having to do with Seder Ishtalshlos, going all the way up to Arich. Over there, our avoida matters. You're talking about Atik Yoimin. Oh, that's totally beyond Seder Ishtalshlos. Over there, our avoida doesn't matter. Now the Rebbe is going to say, we can't say that our avodah doesn't matter at all on a level that's higher than Ishtalshus. He says 2 lines in the bottom, Amna be'emes, ein zet maas v'gadayin levayr. Mashakosav avartem esavayr lekeichem. In truth, this is insufficient to explain the pasuk where it says, you will serve Hashem your God. Mashakosav avartem goymer koyal madreges seder Ishtalshus, that you're going to say, that when it talks about that your service, it's talking about the levels of Seder Ishtalshlos. And therefore, now we understand, avoida matters in Seder Ishtalshlos. So the Rebbe says, you cannot just get away with that. It's explained the Chassidus. On to 167, the Pasuk of Avaltem, and this Pasuk of Avaltem, Yeshtira Mereisha de Krol Sefer. There is a contradiction from the beginning to the end of the Pasuk. The Bedchilahu Oimer Vavatem is Havai Lekechem. Initially he says, you shall serve Havai your God, and he will bench your breads and your waters. He says it in Lashon Nister. Lashon Nister means third person. We're talking not about I, not talking about you, we're talking about him. Third person will bench. Afterwards, the pasuk speaks in first person. In second person. He says in first and second person, I will remove illness from amongst you, in a way that he's talking about himself. He's talking towards someone, but it's the main thing is he is talking about himself instead of in third person. So what's the significance for our question? So first we need to understand the language of the Torah in general, that in general, up to Chumash Devarim, it speaks about Hashem, it speaks as if there's a third person, what's called a narrator. So he says in the third line, the idea behind this is, it's according to what the Ramban wrote in his introduction to his commentary on the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu did not write the Torah as if he was speaking. Again, the first 4 Sfarim, it doesn't say, Hashem spoke to me saying, HaChodesh Hazalachem Rosh Chadosh. But rather it says, Hashem spoke to Moshe. But rather, Moshe Rabbeinu, Kasav Chulu, Moshe Rabbeinu transcribed the Torah, Kishlishi HaMedaber, as if there was a third person, a narrator, it's called in literature, I believe. Hainu Arbos, Asfarim Arishayim Shal Torah, the first four Sfarim of the Torah, Kasvam Kishlishi HaMedaber, he wrote it as if there is a third person that's recording the events that happened between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not that Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking on his own. Then it should have said that Hashem spoke to me, as it, let's say, says in Chumash Dvarim, where over there it is Moshe Rabbeinu's voice that is heard. It's also not Hashem speaking. Then it should have said, I spoke to Moshe. Rather, there's like a narrator, someone else that's relating the story and the events that happened between Hashem and Moshe. It's not Havaya that's speaking the words of the Torah. It's not Moshe that's speaking the words of the Torah in the first 4 Sfarim. There's a third individual, a third speaker. He relates that Havaya spoke to Moshe. So Chassidus goes on to explain, after what the Ramban says, Who is this Shlishi HaMedaber? What level is this Shlishi HaMedaber? So we know what Moshe is, we know what Yud Kei Vav Kei is. We have no identity given to who's that third individual. So he says the Shlishi HaMedaber B'chinas Atzmus Mahus Ein Sof Baruch Hu Shalom Mailom B'chinas Shem Havaya de Moshe. The third, that one that's speaking, the narrator, is Hashem's very essence that's beyond name Yud Kei Vav Kei, and for sure beyond Moshe. The Shem Havaya, what's it mean beyond Shem Havaya? So he explains the Shem Havaya, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, though the name Havaya is a combination of the three words was, is, and will be, and they're all combined as one, meaning that it transcends time, it combines and compresses it all together, past, present, and future, which shows that it's a very high level beyond the worlds. It's still in all, it has a connection with the being and the coming into being of the world. That's why Havaya is from the word Mahava, which means that despite its very high level, it still has a connection, like he says in the parentheses. But the third, the narrator, is that's that's Hashem's very essence, that's beyond this. And if it's beyond Shem Havayim, for sure it's higher than Moshe. He is beyond both. Nor sailed was his fargikum in Seder Ishtalshlos. He relates, he narrates what occurred in Seder Ishtalshlos. As Vayidaber Havaya al Moshe, that Havaya spoke to Moshe. The Zeu Inyan Shlishi Hamedaber, Shlishi Shubachinas Ha'atzmus. That's the level of the third, which is the level of Hashem's essence. Now, Moshe can represent the level of Chachmei Law, it represents other levels in Seder Ishtalshlos. So now he's going to say Seder Ishtalshlos of this Havaya and Moshe is always a dual system. In Seder Ishtalshlos, it's always a two-part system. In general, Ishtalshlos is divided to two aspects. There's the levels of godliness that permeates the world, the level that transcends the world. There's also another dual system that runs correspondingly, B'chinas Oiris, B'chinas Kelim, and even in Oiris itself, there is B'chinas Ha'ir K'meshul La'atzmai, V'Agilik K'meshul Uzlasai. There's a level of the light, the way it's internal and only for itself, and then there's the revelation, the way it has to do with another. The base in Yonim Eluhu Inyan Ishtalshalos, Seder Ishtalshalos. When you have these two types of levels, that's when you have Seder Ishtalshalos, and that's what Havaya and Moshe represent in the Psukim and the Torah. This is what it says in the pasuk, that He will make us live from 2 days, meaning the Seder Ishtalshalos of the twofold part, the dual nature of Seder Ishtalshalos. It says further in that pasuk, in the third day He will raise us up and we will live, we will be vitalized before Him in the highest, most levels. That's the third day, the third level. Hu inyan hagilui the atzmus u'mahus ein sof baruch hu, the revelation of Hashem's very essence. That's the level of the third one that is speaking, the narrator. Does that koyal b'chiras atzmus? That's going on Hashem's very essence. Now let's bring it back to our pasuk, where he goes from third person to first person. Let's see it inside. This is what it says, that you will serve Havaya your God. That's the normal narration. The narrator, third person. The third person, the narrator, is saying that when you will serve Hashem your God, then He will bench your bread and your waters. That's going on Hashem, that He will bench your bread and your water. The narrator, we said, is Hashem's very essence. If Hashem's very essence were benching the water, then He would have to say, I would bench your bread and water. It doesn't say that. It says He, referring to Shem Havaya. In addition to this, the vasiroisi machle mekir b'cha, in addition to havaya, benching your breads and waters, it says, I will remove illness from amongst you. Vasiroisi lashon noichach, Vasiroisi says, I will, it means he's facing the person, but it's first person saying this. And the narrator is saying it on his own behalf. That he himself will remove the illness from within you. All of this is through your serving Havai Lakechem, Daidei Havoida, through the level of Avoida, not only will he bench your breads and waters, but the Berach Koyal Avai, that a Berach is going on Avaya, Ela Oidzais, even more so, the Vasiroisi Machla, Shai de Avoida, Negam Shlisha Medaber, Ba'atzmi Yasir Machla Mekir B'cha. The Shlisha Medaber, Hashem himself, Hashem's very essence will remove the illness. From this understood that the avoida matters even to the level of atzmus. Not like we said before that an atik over there avoida doesn't matter. It only matters in arich. We need to understand how does the level of avoida reach over there? Because if you have been righteous, if you gave tzedakah, what have you given him? So how can we say through service, it reaches to Hashem's very essence that he will remove the illness from within you?